when you grow up down south, man, you don't really see a lot of people who have entrepreneurs, who's an entrepreneur and things of that nature. You kind of grow up amongst people who, back when I grew up, we worked in the fields and things of that nature, because I grew up in the 70s. But I always had a desire to want more. I just didn't know how to get there. I didn't know. I was a young kid, man, and I would go and invest large amounts of money into those opportunities, those banks over there. And then right around the time when the '08 crash happened, one of the banks that I had money invested with, the bank went under. And so all that deposit money just got wiped out.
Wow.
If you got to foreclose, now you're gonna lose money, because now you're spending money with attorneys and things like that. So that can eat into your profit. So if you went into the deal expecting to make 13 to 15% return on your money, now you got to foreclose. The more likely now you're gonna probably end up getting less return on investment. If we don't understand the world that we're in now, the global world that we're in now, and start trying to embrace that, many of us in this country are gonna lose our value, right? Because when you got a business owner like yourself that can go and get talent from in other parts of the country, you got AI now. So the question now becomes, how do I make myself valuable? And I think it all boils down to strategy.
Hey, wait. I know you want to watch this next video, but listen, if you are an entrepreneur, business coach, business consultant, or a small business owner who has a story and wants to learn how to create multiple streams of income from your story, I need you to text me right now, my book, to 646-687-4152. That is my personal number. I have been an author for over 12 years. I've written 10 books. 4 of them have been bestsellers, and I've sold over 100,000 books. But I've also helped a lot of my clients take their expertise and put it into a story, then create multiple streams of income from that. So I want to help you do the same thing. So text my book to 646-687-4152. All right, let's go back to the video. So welcome to another awesome episode of Inside the Vault with Ash Cash, the greatest money mindset show on the planet. When I tell you this next guest is going to blow your mind. If you've ever thought about trying to figure out how to build generational wealth, how to build real cash flow, we have the expert of experts here in the building. We have Tim T. Mercer with over 20 years of experience spanning real estate, finance, and government contracting. Tim has established himself as a true force to be reckoned with in the world of entrepreneurship. As the CFO of both Cadence Ventures, a real estate private equity firm, and IBOX Global, a DoD contractor with total annual revenues exceeding $78 million. Tim's impact is reflected in those numbers. IBOX Global's position as number 357 on the Inc. 500's annual list of fast and growing companies is a testament to Tim's ability to drive exponential growth. But his influence extends far beyond just the bottom line. The U.S. Army veteran and philanthropist has also authored the acclaimed book, Bootstrapped Millionaire, sharing the insights and strategies that have fueled his own remarkable success. In fact, study shows that entrepreneurs who leverage their personal experiences and lessons learned in published works are 43% more likely to secure funding and scale their businesses. And Tim is putting that principle into practice, serving on the boards of several nonprofit organizations while passionately advocating for others to follow in his entrepreneurial footsteps. As the business landscape continues to evolve, visionaries like Tim T. Mercer stand poised to lead the charge. Join us and dive into the details behind his meteoric rise and uncover the secrets to replicating his proven formula for exponential growth. Ladies and gentlemen, I need y'all to put the comments up, the likes and everything for Mr. Tim T. Mercer.
Appreciate you,
What's
brother.
up, brother? What's up, brother?
Appreciate you, man.
It's such a pleasure to connect with you, man, and to have this interview because, you know, I've been on the forefront of teaching financial education for this is actually my 20-year anniversary.
Yeah.
I started in 2004. I'm always intrigued as to connecting with other people who really help you build real wealth, and what you have done in your career is astonishing. One thing that I wanted to point out, and we don't have to start here because I want you to tell the audience who you are first, right? Mm-hmm. But one thing that stood out to me, that at the age of 30. You had over $1 million in cash saved in the bank, yet you still were financially illiterate with no idea of what to do with the money, and eventually lost it all over a course of 7 years, several years. So I want to talk about that. We want to talk about that because $1 million in cash saved at 30 is phenomenal. And then but losing. So I want to talk about that. But before we even get there, in your words, who is Tim T. Mercer?
I guess in the simplest way of explaining, I'm just an old country boy, man. I'm originally from South Carolina, little small town right between Myrtle Beach and Florence, South Carolina. Just a country boy who grew up in the South with a lot of aspirations of wanting to achieve success. But as you know, I mean, I don't know where I think you might be from up north, right?
New York, yes, sir.
When you grow up down south, man, you don't really see a lot of people who have entrepreneurs, who's an entrepreneur and things of that nature. You kind of grow up amongst people who, back when I grew up, I mean, we worked in the fields and things of that nature, because I grew up in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So, but I always had a desire to want more. I just didn't know how to get there, right? And fortunately for me, my cousin was in the military, and I kind of saw that he was in the military, and the military was kind of that opportunity to get out of Mullins and to see different things. And it was a blessing for me because it really, going in the military, allowed me to see the world in a different perspective. And but everything from there, really, man, it was just God's grace upon my life and kind of showing me different things and being self-taught and learning things on my own about finance, entrepreneurship, and things of that nature.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I want to jump right to it, though, brother.
Yeah.
How did you save $1 million in cash by the age of 30?
So I went to DeVry. So when I got out of the military, I came to Atlanta and went to school at DeVry. And this was around the time when DeVry, the program was you would go to school year round, and you get a 4-year degree in 3 years, right? And it was a great program because they catered to the ex-military people and things of that nature. But it was right at the time when the IT industry started booming. It was late 90s. The wireless cell phone boom had just started. So when I got out of DeVry, I started working for a company. It was a company from Germany that brought a billing system here to the U.S. And actually, that billing system still exists today. Verizon and all these companies still use that same billing system. So I was one of the first persons to really learn and understood that billing system. I went and spent about a year in Germany learning the billing system and learning how to work it. And there wasn't many people in the U.S. who knew how to configure and set up this billing system. So I worked for that company for about a year. And fortunate, kind of unfortunate at that time, they didn't want to give me a raise, right? I asked them, I said, hey, can I get a raise? And at that time, I was making like $30,000 a year. They didn't want to give me a raise. So long story short, I eventually became an independent consultant. And a lot of the carriers like Verizon, AT&T, they were looking for my talent. And so I would go and freelance and work as an independent consultant for those companies. And literally back then, they would pay for everything, expense accounts, the whole nine. So I never had to spend any of my money. And I knew how to save money. And, but I tell people, you can't save your way to wealth, but I knew how to save money. And that's eventually how, over the course of 3 years, I would just save the money that I was making, only spend the expense account money. And one day I just kind of looked up, man, when me and my wife got married, that was it's like, man, I mean, I felt good about getting married because I knew I could take care of this woman at that point in time. But yeah, I had $1 million saved in the bank. Now, I'm not proud of it. Now that I have better financial literacy, that was actually dumb, right? Having that much money sitting in a bank account, but I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do, and unfortunately, that lack of financial literacy led to my demise.
Wow. And then what was how did you kind of like lose it in several years? Was it expenses? Was it bad decisions? Did you go to Vegas?
No. I mean, again, I was always very frugal, right? I'm growing up poor, you learn how to become very frugal. So I didn't spend the money on, I didn't go out and buy Bugattis and all that type of stuff. It really was in making bad decisions, right? I made bad financial decisions, bad investment decisions. Now, I mean, I didn't know how to invest. So what I would do, obviously, people would come to me and they would know that I had money, and they would pitch ideas or investment strategies and things like that to me. And I didn't understand any of these things, right? I mean, especially offshore investments, right? I remember that was one of the biggest ones that I got jammed up in. And it was an offshore investment. You had to go overseas to even invest in the deal, right? This is back in the time when these guys used to talk about these things about giving up your social security number and all that type of stuff. You hear people talk about that stuff now, right? And you would go over there, and I didn't know. I was a young kid, man, and I would go and invest large amounts of money into those opportunities, those banks over there, and then right around the time when the '08 crash happened, one of the banks that I had money invested with, the bank went under. And so all that deposit money just got wiped out.
Wow.
Right? I remember it like it was yesterday. You got a letter and they basically said, hey, look, your deposits are gone, right? And who do you call, right? I mean, you can't call anybody and say, what am I doing here? Right. So it was through those type of things. Losing money in the stock market, investing in the stock market, didn't know anything about the stock market. Real estate, obviously, I didn't really lose money in the real estate. I think for me, when which was where I should have kept my money, but because of my lack of financial literacy, I would invest in real estate and then pull my money out of it because I was fearful because I couldn't see the numbers on the screen, right? When I logged in my bank account, I wanted to see that number. Right. It was something fascinating about logging in your bank account and see that number on the screen, not realizing that the money was never there in the first place. Right. So it was just bad decisions, trying to grow the money, but not knowing how to grow it.
Yeah. Let me as a poor kid growing in the South, to have become a millionaire, like how did that feel to you? Well,
I mean, it really, and that's a good question because I don't know how I really felt, right? It kind of came up, and I really didn't even know that I had saved that much money at one point in time because I just had my head down grinding, right? So when I finally realized that, oh man, you got $1 million saved, I immediately got more fearful, right? Because now I'm like, okay, how do I don't want to squander this, right? I don't want to, I want to be a good steward, right? So how do I invest it and grow it? And that's what led me into those ventures that I led into.
And you wound up getting what you feared anyway.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
That's a lesson. That's a lesson, right? That's a lesson. Regardless of what your intentions are, you will always get what you focus on.
That's exactly right. I was a fear of losing it, right? But I ended up losing it anyway as a result of that fear.
Wow.
But I will say that losing that money at that point in time in my life was probably one of the greatest lessons for me.
Absolutely. And I have similar stories of losing millions of dollars myself, and I do agree, right? And I guess anybody who doesn't understand that, right, will probably be like, what they talk about? Like, they too relaxed, right? But the truth of the matter is, it is the best thing that can happen to you, because if you understand, number one, if you understand your God-given ability, if you could do it once, you could do it twice.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
But also, first $1 million or whatever amount of money is nothing compared to what you what's reserved for you, right? Because that's why I always have right. Abundance is your birthright. So there is no cap, right, in the amount of money that you could actually obtain, but also the lessons that you learn in losses. And the funny thing about it is, I believe that a lot of times the lessons are the same lessons, but we weren't just listening. Right, when we lost 15,000, or we lost a dollar, we didn't pay attention. We lost 15,000, we didn't pay attention. We lost so God was like, listen, you know what? What's gonna make them listen?
Absolutely.
And then that's where the big things come.
Absolutely, yeah.
The big losses,
and the thing too is, I remember my wife. My wife had just gotten married probably a few years before, and she would ask me questions about these different investment things that I was investing into. Yeah. And there was a sense of arrogancy that I had, right? As they say, pride comes before the fall, right? Yeah. And there was a sense of arrogancy that I had, because I'm like, well, I mean, what do you know about this stuff, right? And it was funny because one investment opportunity I
hope my wife doesn't hear this. It's a similar story.
It's a similar, right? That's right. And she would ask me questions, and I ignored it, right? I ignored it. And it's funny because one of the investments that I had lost a tremendous amount of money in, she kept asking me about this thing. And I remember even talking to an attorney that was at my church, and he kind of was asking me some of the same questions, and he had even concerns with it. But in the arrogancy that I had then was like, well, what did he know? I got more money than he does, right? Right. And funny enough, the reason why that investment fell apart was for the exact same reasons that they were asking me about, right? So it was almost like God was trying to give me warnings,
right?
But the arrogancy and the pride prevented that, and as a result, I ended up losing it.
And that's what they say, right? Ego is edging God out. Right? So God gave you the tools, and then you started to edge God out. You said, God, I got this.
Oh wow, right? I like that.
And then through that, you get what you get.
Yeah.
And so how did you talk to me about your entrepreneurship journey, right? So how did you go, with 20 years of experience, finance, you real estate, you've done, U.S. Army veteran. What was that road into entrepreneurship?
Well, I started out mostly as a solopreneur, right? Which most of us typically do, right? Which now I realize that, that to me personally, I don't think that's true entrepreneurship. I was in business for myself and by myself, right? But it started out with me going into independent consulting, right? Leaving the job, working as an independent IT consultant, and then obviously getting into real estate. It's funny because my first real estate deal I actually took money that I had and started doing private money lending. Now I didn't know what that was back then. It was just a friend of mine said, "Hey man, I got a real estate opportunity. You got some money? Can you invest in the deal?" And so I was like a capital partner at that point in time. Again, not realizing what I was doing. So a lot of my entrepreneur journey was really just trial and error, man. Throw it against the wall and see what stick. Yeah. Right. And I would tell anybody, man, and as you probably know, entrepreneurship is hard.
Oh, 100%.
You gotta
have the stomach. Yeah. Like a lot of people don't got the stomach
right.
for it.
I personally would not recommend it to a lot of people.
I agree.
Because when I look back over the years, the pain, the stress, all that stuff, man, is hard. I mean, waking up in the middle of the night, afraid, trying to figure out, what's my next move, right? A lot of people don't realize, man, that takes a lot of, it's a lot of stress on your body.
100%.
Right? Yeah. And when you losing money and trying to figure out, man, how you going to pay your mortgage, and you got a wife or kids and all that type of stuff. So my journey really, man, it was trial and error, learning things on my own, losing. I tell people I've probably lost more than I won, right? Yeah. Now, fortunate, I think, being involved in the IT field early on, it was those big spurt wins, right? Getting into government contracting, right? That was a big spurt win. But along the way, there was more losses than the wins.
Yeah.
It was just that fortunate enough, I was able to win. And when I did win, I won big, right?
Yeah.
That allowed you to be able to get my weight up or to get my capital stack up. But the entrepreneur journey, man, is a hard journey, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? I think we all still learning every day.
Yeah. And I you mentioned like starting out, lending money for real estate deal, almost, not even almost, but you became the bank.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You became the bank. And I know that the majority of wealthy people, it don't even have to be in America. Wealthy people around the world have assets in real estate.
Yes.
Right. And so I know that real estate is a vehicle for true wealth. And I never thought about becoming the bank and lending money for real estate. What are some pros and cons of being a private lender? Or
Well, I think one of the biggest pros is the fact that, contrary to popular belief, I mean, as the lender, you really own the property, right? You think about it. I mean, when somebody gets a mortgage, even if you go to the bank, right, and you get a mortgage, the bank truly owns the property, right? Because they hold the mortgage, they hold the deed, et cetera. So when I lend money out on real estate deals, I'm really partnering with that real estate investor in some regards, right? My money is protected by the real estate, right? Now, the true art is in knowing how to structure the deal, knowing how to, if I'm gonna lend money to you on a deal, I need to ensure that I have enough leverage in that deal and enough protection, right? I need to know that you have skin in the game, right? So if I'm lending money on a real estate deal, typically I like to do it at especially if it's a construction deal, I typically like to be at 60% of the after repair value, right?
Okay. Yep.
And you, the investor, you don't get any of my money until you spend some of your money. So really all I'm doing is I'm reimbursing you back for money that you spend. So if you buy the land and you need the construction money to build, I'll give you the construction money to build, but I'm giving it to you in a drawdown schedule, right? So that when you go and put the footers in or you go do the framing, I send an inspector out, they verify that the framing is complete, then I will release the money. Why is that important? Because now that gives me I'm maintaining my leverage, right? Because if you walk away from the deal, you've now increased the value of that project, right? And that protects me, in that regard.
That's smart.
Yeah.
And let me unpack this, right? So you lend money, right, up to 60% of the after repair value, right?
Correct, yeah.
And so if I have a property that, let's say I want to buy for $100,000, and then once I fix it up, let's just say for easy math, that it's worth $200,000.
Yes.
That means after repair, you're talking $120,000, right? 60% of 200,000.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you would lend up to 120,000 for that deal.
Right. Yeah.
But you do it in a drawdown way so that you're never just giving you 120,000 so that person could go and buy another property and fix and flip somewhere else.
That's right.
You say, all right, I'm gonna give you this in a drawdown where if you put 10,000 in, here's you can draw down 10,000.
Yes.
You put 50,000 in, right? And so sometimes they may not even use the whole 120. Is that
sometimes they may not, right? Sometimes now ideally they want to, because when they give you the budget, we're gonna do the drawdown schedule based on the budget. So the ideal is that you will exhaust the budget, right?
Got it.
But also at the same time too, remember they're paying interest on the full amount, even though it's not totally all the way drawn down, right? Because the money is already allocated, right? Some people will wonder, well, why am I paying interest on the full amount, and I'm not getting access to it? Because the money is allocated.
Right, it can't be used anywhere else. It's already set aside for it, so it's not in anything else earning interest or being lent anywhere else.
That's
got
right.
it.
That's exactly right.
Got it. Okay.
and we can get creative in certain regards. Sometimes I get creative where we may instead, when they first, if I got enough room in there, instead of them coming out of the gate paying an interest payment, I may put the first 3 months of interest on the back of the loan, right?
Yep.
So that way I give the investor the opportunity to be able to come out of the gates and start building without having to worry about chasing after that mortgage payment, right?
Yeah.
So you can be creative in that way, especially if you structure the deal the right way. And actually structuring it the right way is actually beneficial to the real estate investor, because if his debt is only 60% of ARV, he or she now has room to get out of that loan. Right?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, because if they build a single family house, and they don't have no tenants in the house right now, if they go to refinance and get a permanent loan with no tenant in the house, most lenders are only going to lend up to 70% of the value because there's no tenants in there. Right. You know, so if the debt if we're only at 60%, then that gives them room to get out of that deal if they want to refinance out. Got it.
And then, so what are some of the cons, right? Some of
the cons is, again, knowing the legal aspect of things, or not structuring the deal correctly, right? I mean, I see so many hard money lenders or private lenders that will lend money out, over leverage it, right? Where they may lend 75% of the ARV. Well, the problem now is, how does this investor get out of the loan?
Right.
When the project is finished and their debt is 75% of the value, and they have no tenant in the home, and most of the time when you do a refinance, the max is only going to be 75%. The banks don't lend 80% on a refinance. Typically 80% is on a purchase.
Right.
So if they can only refinance at 75% and the debt is already at 75%, how do they get out now? Now they got to pay money to get out of the deal and things of that nature. So that's a con if you don't necessarily structure the deal right. If you don't know all the legalities and things of that nature, you got to be very careful with that, knowing that you got the proper attorneys that is setting up and structuring the mortgage correctly and things of that nature. Obviously, foreclosure is something, even as a lender, no lender wants to foreclose. I tell people all the time, I don't want the property. I mean, if I wanted the property, I would have went out and started building. Exactly. So I just want my money, right? So if you got to foreclose, now you're gonna lose money because now you're spending money with attorneys and things like that. So that can eat into your profit. So if you went into the deal expecting to make 13 to 15% return on your money, now you got to foreclose. The more likely now you're gonna probably end up getting less return on investment.
Got it. And so, and as a former banker, I know that we wouldn't lend to real estate investors, right? Like it was like, that's when you go through banking training, that's probably one of money laundering, real estate investors. It's like right under money laundering. Right?
Exactly right.
Like we don't lend for certain businesses. And so, how is private, real estate lending, closing that gap for real estate investors? Well,
and that's a good point that you make, because you're right. I mean, most people think that they can go to JP Morgan or Bank of America and get a loan that doesn't happen, right? They're not going to do it because they feel it's very risky. But the private lenders are filling that gap, right? Now you have institutional private lenders like private equity firms and things of that nature. You may have small groups. Crowdfunding now has become very popular, where people are crowding their money together and lending on real estate deals. But the real estate investor has to know that what protects that private money lender is your equity, right? So it's one of those deals where you can't expect it, hey man, I'm gonna get into this deal with 5% down, 10% down, right? It doesn't happen in the private money world, because equity is the driving factor. So we need to see that you have 20, 30% of your money in the deal with reserves and all those type of things, because if the deal goes bad, most private hard money lenders, they're going to take the deal, right? And a lot of hard money lenders are actually real estate investors. They use this strategy to be able to get to deals that they probably could have never gotten to. Because if you foreclose, they're just going to take the deal and finish the deal themselves and make more money from it.
Wow. And then so you know, private lending, like what are those sources, right? Especially for like entrepreneurs, right? Like what are those sources of funds available to them to start their real estate investing?
You're talking about to do private money lending?
Yeah, to do private.
Yeah, so like for us, we like when we first started, my wife had a 401k, right? When she left her job, you know how like you can convert that 401k into a self-directed IRA.
Yep.
Right? So now a lot of private investors, private lending groups, they will go to people who have 401ks. And then because that's another way to grow your 401k in a very safe but accelerated way.
Yes.
So they'll go to them and say, hey man, you got $200,000-$300,000 in your 401k.
Yep.
You move it to a self-directed IRA.
Yep.
Now you can actually invest into these projects and get a better return, because many of these projects, I mean, hard money lending right now, the rates are starting at 12 and can go up to 18%.
Yeah.
So if you're investing into one of these projects with your 401k, you might now be getting 10% return on your 401k, and it's secured by the real estate.
Right.
So a lot of private hard money lenders, they raise money from other capital partners, like people who have 401ks and things of that nature.
Yeah.
In case you just run into someone who has a large amount of money.
And I love that. So because what it sounds like to me is that the everyday person could become a private lender.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All day long. Yeah. We just don't know.
Yeah.
We just don't know that we can, right?
And it's funny because I had one of I had my aunt actually she retired from the post office. And she reached out to me and she said, like, man, I got $200,000 just sitting in this 401k. I don't need the money, right? Because I got money, I got money coming in, so I don't need the money. It's just sitting there. What do I do with it? Right. And you think about all of the, like there's so many people out there that just have money just sitting in a 401k doing nothing, right? And I love, taking that and putting it into a self-directed IRA, because a lot of, again, with our 401ks, we feel like we're just going to do whatever the job tells us to do.
Yes.
Right? And so that's how, the Bernie Madoffs of the world happen. That's how you lose money, because you're just listening and doing this one thing when, right, there's opportunity to go self-directed, invest in real estate, and worst case scenario, the property is always gonna be there. And because the property has this value, it's not like you lose the money. It's all about just finding a different investor so you can get your money back.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Yeah. And the good thing about it is multiple people can be on a deed. Wow. See, that's another thing, because a lot of times you'll get these guys who syndicators and stuff. They will come to you and say, well, just give me the money, right? They'll say, give me the money, I'll put it in my deal. They're syndicators, right? So these guys, they basically syndicating money from all these people, and then they may put it in a real estate deal, or they may lend it out and things of that nature. And sometimes, I mean, I'm not a total big fan of that unless you truly know who the syndicator is, who the sponsor is, because obviously, a lot of times you just handing your money to them.
Right.
But let's say you find a deal, and let's say it's a $500,000 deal, and that project may need 3 investors that can put up, $150,000 or $200,000 apiece. Well, all 3 of you can go on the deed. So when the attorneys write up the deed, right? All 3 of you go on the deed, and then when that property sells, or when the investor sells the property, and of course they got to pay off the liens. When at that closing, you will get a check. The other person get a check. You get your check in, and you get the principal and interest back.
And I like that, because at the end, like you said, right, if you do a syndicated deal, right, and if y'all are insiders, we had a show where we talked about syndication. If you do a syndicated deal, like you said, you have this person that is raising the funds, and your trust is in that person, if you will. And you're obviously you're gonna have contracts and things of that nature, but it's still the trust in that person, and the person is now the conduit. They buy the property, and then however way, but they're going to be distributing the funds. But in having your name on the actual deed, you're not trusting the person.
No,
you're putting your trust in the property, in the land, and you have that deal. So you don't have to worry about your syndicator getting paid and deciding not to pay you because they want to take the money and put it in this other deal, right? And then now you got to chase them down, because they said May and now it's September and you can't get your money back.
That's exactly right.
Right.
In fact, that's happening right now with you've heard of Peer Street.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Peer Street is a big crowdfund platform, right? And Peer Street was doing the same thing, right? They would have people to put money into various deals and things like that. Well, Peer Street had just earlier this year, I believe, just filed bankruptcy. So a lot of those investors are sitting on the sideline trying to figure out what's going to happen, what's happening, because they were never on the deed.
Right.
Right. They thought that the money was secured, their deals were secured by real estate, but the way Peer Street has set it up was the fact that some way they set it up, those people didn't have they were not on the deeds. That's the long story short. They were not on the deeds. So a lot of those people now are kind of scrambling, trying to figure out what's going to happen with their money. Because of course, when Peer Street files bankruptcy, you know what happens then.
Right.
Money gets wiped out.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow.
So I tell people, even with private hard money lending, you have to educate yourself to know the rules of the game.
Yeah.
Because you just don't want someone to come in and say, hey, well, just give me the money. I'll invest it on this deal.
Yep.
And then you don't know how they're managing the deal, right? You just may want to make sure that you are attached to that deed in some kind of way.
Yeah. Wow. And so let's talk about Cadence Ventures for a second, right? As the CEO of Cadence Ventures and IBOX Global, you've helped drive, like, the growth is out of this world, right? Ranked 357 on the Inc. 500 list. Talk to us a little bit about, like, what are some of the key financial strategies and principles you've implemented to like fuel that type of success?
Right. So IBOX Global, now IBOX Global is our GovCon company, right? That's the business that we started in 2008. We got into government contracting in 2012, right? So IBOX Global really is the company that kind of drove and fueled the growth that you're talking about. Cadence Ventures, we started that company last year. My wife and I, that's when we started doing the private hard money lending and things of that nature.
Got it.
So that company is obviously still growing.
Yeah.
But IBOX Global, the growth really happened when we got into government contracting, which I encourage any small business. If you're starting a small business, if you're not doing business with the government, you're really doing yourself a disservice. We got into the 8-8 program back in 2012, which the 8-8 program is a minority program for government contractors, which allow you to be able to secure government contracts up to $4 million per contract, basically in a sole source capacity, meaning that the government can actually award you that contract. As long as you can prove that you can perform, they can award you that contract with no competition.
Wow, yeah.
And
up to $4 million.
Up to $4 million per contract. And so when I got started in government contracting, it was very slow at first. I mean, that's another one of those areas where a lot of people don't really teach you, a lot about how to really do it. And but I went in and started grinding, and I began to really understand how to do government procurement. And I started focusing on product, right? Where most people would focus on services like, because in government contracting, you either selling the government bodies or you selling them product, right? So we would sell them IT-related equipment, monitors, computers, microphones, all this type of stuff we would sell. And they would, the government and our manufacturers just drop ship it to the government. So we ended up, we like I said, we did over $78 million in sales to the government, literally just drop shipping product.
But you gotta say that number again, because you got mumbled that one a little bit.
yeah. So it's about 7-8 million. Yeah. But I'm telling you, that's a small amount of money, man. When it comes to the government, I mean, it sounds a lot, but it really is small when it compares to the amount of money the government spends, right? And then
it's billions or trillions. How much?
Oh my God, man! The government, yeah. I mean, the government's. They're the biggest customer on the planet.
Facts, yeah.
Right. So they're. Just with small businesses, the government spend billions of dollars with small businesses.
Wow.
And then when you get down to just minority small businesses, that number is still staggering, but it's still a very. The amount that we make is very, very small, right? In my opinion, right?
Yep.
But the government pays on time.
Yes.
They
never go out of business.
Never go out of business.
They can print whenever.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
So we really built that growth from being in government contract.
Yeah.
I would have never been able to build that growth outside of government contract. At least from my humble opinion, right?
Right.
Trying to do it with corporations and things of that nature would have been tough.
Yeah.
But when I got into government contracting allowed a small business like me to be able to get $1 million contracts. And that's really where the growth came from.
Yeah. What would you say is the key to success in government contracting? Like, is it delegation? Is it hiring a big team? Like, how do you get to a point where you've been able to sell $78 million to the government?
I think the key is understanding government procurement. You got to understand how the government buys things, right? Because the government, it's not like corporations I don't have to go out and market to the government. I don't have to go out and run ads and things of that nature, right? It's more, in my opinion, it's more data mining, right? The government opportunities are out there for the general public every single day. They put these solicitations out there all the time. But knowing how to understand those solicitations, knowing how to interact with the government, because there's specific ways you have to do it where you're not breaking the rules and things of that nature. When you understand that, and for me, I started, a lot of people would go on these government sites and look for actual requests for proposals, RFPs, right? I stopped doing that because most of the time when you look for requests for proposals, the deal is already, we like to call in the government world, it's already teed up for somebody. I started looking for requests for information, what they call RFIs, because the government now is putting that out there saying, hey, can anybody out there in the contracting world do this work? And the rule is that if two small businesses raise their hand and say that they can do the work, then the government has to make it a small business set aside, right? That means that the only people that can compete is just small businesses. And so that's what I would start doing. I would look for the RFIs. I would look and say, okay, can I do this work, right? And I will even go to another small business competitor that I say, hey man, have you seen this RFI? You should check that out. You should respond, right? Now, why would I do that?
Right.
Because I want two or more small businesses to respond, right? And when we respond, then the government would talk to us during the RFI phase, talk to us about the requirements, even to the point where we would even help the government we would help them with their market research, right? So, and I wasn't getting paid for this, right? And a lot of times you'd work on this thing for a year, and a lot of small businesses won't do it because they're like, man, I'm not doing this work. And the government will tell you, hey, you're not going to get paid for this.
Right.
But I looked at it as a way in which hey man, I'm going to put in the work on my own dime to help them with their market research. Because worst case scenario, when that RFP does come out, I'm going to have a lot of intelligence about it that you won't have because you never worked on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yo, if y'all not paying attention, I need y'all to rewind what he did. He literally just gave you millions of dollars worth of game, because that's what I always thought. I always thought when you are looking for RFP, I'm like, no, I already know. Like, I won't give up too much, but I've won contracts that I knew I was going to win because I knew somebody who was like, I got this thing coming up.
Exactly.
Here we go. Here's the link. And so knowing that as somebody who's received, I also, when I go to these sites blind.
Yes.
I'm also saying they already know who they want to give.
They already know. They already know. By the time it hits the RFP, the government already, the acquisition strategy has already been determined. Right. I mean, because if they decided that we're gonna put this out on, let's say, a contract vehicle like NASA suit, well, if you don't have that contract vehicle, then you can't even bid.
Right.
Or if the government, like when we would go with RFIs, I would ask the government during the time that we're kind of doing market research, I would say, well, can you make this an 8-8 set aside, right? Yeah. Because we're in the RFI stage now. Right. We're in the beginning stages. You can request that the government makes this a set aside just for 8-8 companies.
Right.
Worst case scenario now, I'm only competing with other 8-8s.
8-8s,
right? So the acquisition,
it's still up to $4 million.
And it was up to $4 million. That's right.
Yeah.
So you kind of help shape the acquisition strategy.
Wow.
And so that when it does come out as an RFP, the acquisition strategy may say that this is a set aside only for 8-8s, and if you're not an 8-8, then you can't bid on it anyway.
Wow. Powerful gems, I'm telling you, gems after gems. Talk to us about the inspiration around, you writing Bootstrapped Millionaire.
Yeah. So I wrote the book in 2020, and it was part of really of my exit strategy, right? Because I knew being in government contracting, I knew that, okay, I got 9 years in the 8-8 program. What do I start to do to kind of exit out of it once my 8-8 certification is up and whatnot? And I wanted to be able to give back, right? The book really is my goal was to create the book to help people understand my journey, but also the book also talks about those tactical things, like how to get into government contracting, understanding financial literacy, and all those type of things. Yeah. So it's really kind of a way to give back to the community and say, hey, look, I'm not saying this is the only way, but this is my way of achieving, quote unquote financial success. Yeah. And so we wrote the book in 2020. The goal was to really kind of do speaking and things of that nature, but obviously COVID happened, so it kind of put a little damper on the growth of the book, and the way the book was going. But now I'm starting to see that a lot of people obviously know me as a result of the book, and see, because I published the book through Forbes. I didn't know about self-publishing what you guys, right? And I wish I would have, because it was pretty expensive publishing with Forbes. Yeah. But they obviously gave me some publicity and things of that nature. But the book really is just hopefully an opportunity for people to see a journey of a country boy like me, and how I did it, and hopefully some young kid can see that and see themselves in that journey, and see that, okay, well, hey, he took advantage of things like going in the military, right? Getting into government contracting and things of that nature. It wasn't about me being such a smart or charismatic guy. It was, hey, how can I take advantage of the things that are put in front of me, and leveraging my financial the skill set of knowing how to budget and things of that nature, and to build some wealth for myself. Yeah, no, I love that. And you mentioned the book is exit strategy, your way of giving back. You also give back through your philanthropy work, right? You sit on the board of some nonprofit organizations. I've sat on boards as well. It's another job, right? And so how do you balance running successful businesses and sit on boards on nonprofits, and why do you feel like you want to give back? Well, because I think, giving back, listen, when you grew up with nothing like I did, right? I think it's my responsibility in some kind of way to give back, right? Yeah. It's kind of like, quote unquote, a form of tithing. Right. When you go to church. Yeah. And the nonprofit that I'm on now is called R4. I'm actually do CFO work for the nonprofit. And the thing that I like about the nonprofit is they help returning citizens, right? Men, particularly young men who have gone to prison, and many of them were sent to prisons for 10, 15 years. Wow. So when those guys get out, they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they get out, they don't know, they have no idea of how to start their life over again and things of that nature. So this nonprofit actually gives them guidance in that regards, right?
Yeah.
And me being, successful in business, I think that every small business owner should find a nonprofit to at least donate money to. Because if you're doing well, and I often tell small business, if you are doing, quote unquote, doing well in your business, don't you need a write-off?
Right, 100%.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So if you need a write-off,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you pick a charity, pick an organization, a nonprofit to give money to? You writing it off on your taxes,
Right.
Obviously you're going to make sure they're legitimate 501(c) and all that stuff, but you're writing it off on your taxes. At the same time, you're helping a worthy cause and you're helping people, right?
100%.
Because when I first started with R4, there was a gentleman, he needed money to get us a car and to just kind of get his life started. So I, being on the board, I donated to the organization, and they were able to fund this man's, pretty much a whole year of him being able to get his life restarted.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
So I think it's just a form of giving back, man. And when you give, as you know, when you give, it comes back to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the universal law. And with R4, is there financial literacy, entrepreneurship? Is that part of the program?
Yeah. They help primarily. They start out helping them with just the basics, right? Helping them get a job, right? Because the R4 contracts with a lot of small businesses and even some big businesses, the Walmarts and all those companies, and through grants that R4 would get, they would actually help those guys get jobs. They would work for these companies. The incentive for the companies is that they get these guys to work with them. They don't have to pay them for the first 6 months because the grants would actually pay their salary. So R4 through the grants would pay their salaries.
Wow.
So the employer gets to have these guys come work for them for 6 months, basically free labor, right?
Yeah.
But if the guys do well on the job, then hopefully the employer will hire them.
Oh, wow.
So it gives them a start for a new life, right? It's a great program because many of these guys get out, man, and they really restart their lives. They can go back and have a better life with their kids and things of that nature. And without programs like that, how do these men or women, how do they really restart their lives after being in prison for 10, 15 years?
Yeah, and that is what causes recidivism, right? Because they can't find a job or they have to resort to going back. We definitely have to connect because one of the things that I've done, like I actually started a nonprofit organization called Abundance Code, creating opportunities despite the environment, and then our focus is on helping formerly incarcerated men and women create businesses and teach them financial literacy. So that's what I was asking. So we'll connect offline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. As a U.S. Army veteran, how has that translated into who you are as an entrepreneur?
I think the key word there is discipline, right? I don't think that I would have learned the discipline that I learn now if it wasn't for going and being in the military, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in a household, man. I mean, my mother was just a loving. I grew up a single family, right? Single mom, but she was just very loving, right? I mean, it just almost to a fault. Right, you know what I'm saying? Because as young boys, sometimes you need more than just the the hugging and the kissing and all that type of stuff, right? Yeah. So I personally would say I was soft. You know what I'm saying? I was a soft kid. You know what I mean? But the military, getting around other men and building the camaraderie with other men, and even men from different walks of life, seeing men from up north and from even my white brothers, what I'm saying, from down in Iowa and places like that. That helped me to be able to see men in a different light, right? In the building camaraderie. So that and being able to establish discipline about myself, right? Knowing that I had to follow a regimen, right? Getting up early in the morning, working out, PT and all those type of things. That helped shape me. So my manhood, in my opinion, came about as a result of being in the military. So that has helped me all along the way in being in business and things of that nature, because you learn how to do those things you don't want to do. Right, you do what you have to do. Right, the military tells you do what you have to do to achieve the results.
Yeah.
So I attribute a lot of my success to the discipline I learned from being in the military.
Yeah, and I love that because as somebody who came from corporate, like working in the banks and things of that nature, even when I was the CEO of a credit union for a short period of time, even that it came with a level of discipline. But by the time I decided to go on my own and become an entrepreneur, there's just a different level of I could do that. Like I could do that later becomes part of your repertoire, and we don't realize that affects our business in a lot of ways. Like right now as we speak, there are entrepreneurs out there that have $1 million businesses that they have not realized yet because they don't have the discipline that
Absolutely.
that you
Absolutely.
have. Yeah.
And that discipline is, knowing how to manage your money, right? Knowing how to manage your time, especially if you got family and all those type of things. That level of discipline is needed to be successful as an entrepreneur. And for me, I learned that from being in the military. Some people learn it in different ways. Like, you learn it from being in corporate and things of that nature. My journey was just learning it from being in the military.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the future of business, right? Because there's a lot. Even in the last year, 2 years, the business landscape has changed. Especially like you think about artificial intelligence, technology. What do you see as the future of business, and what are you doing to stay ahead of the curve, if you will?
Yeah, I think like artificial intelligence right now is getting ready to become the game changer, right? We all know about ChatGPT, right? And think about, we just learned about ChatGPT less than about a little over a year ago.
Right.
Yeah. And think about how much of a game changer
in that short
period of time, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Especially someone like me, I'm not a writer, right? I like numbers, right? I'm a numbers guy.
Yep.
And man, I remember I used to struggle with trying to write emails or write responses and things of that nature. And think about now when you can go to ChatGPT and say, if you're writing a blog, and if you just want to write a blog for your website, you just go to ChatGPT and say, write me this blog that talks about this thing.
Right.
Right. And so I think AI and globalization is getting ready to be the two biggest game changers, because globalization now is where obviously we don't compete locally no more. We compete globally, right? I got VAs that work for my business that are in Pakistan. Right.
Yeah. My graphic designer's in Pakistan, and I got a social media guy in the Philippines.
Exactly right. Yeah. So think about that globalization, and if we don't understand the world that we're in now, the global world that we're in now, and start trying to embrace that, many of us in this country are going to lose our value.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you got a business owner like yourself that can go and get talent from over in other parts of the country, you got AI now. So the question now becomes, how do I make myself valuable? And I think it all boils down to strategy, right?
Yeah.
We can use these tools, right? But if you don't have strategy, then, or that's the most important thing. So I think as an entrepreneur, we have to be thinking strategy now, right? My goal personally, you've read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, right?
Of course, yeah.
And one of the things I always liked about that book is the 4 quadrants, right? Where he talks about, on the left-hand side, you have the E and the S, and you got the B and the I.
Yep.
And in my opinion, true wealth is in that I box.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So my goal has always been, how do I get to the I? Right? How do I work we all have to start somewhere. We have to work our way from that E to the S.
Yep.
Over to the B, right? And the B is great, but as you know, B comes with a lot of issues too, right?
Because so you got employee, self-employed, business investor. Yeah?
Right, yeah. And that business owner, it's great being a business owner.
You creating your own job.
Exactly, right. Because you gotta manage people and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So how do I get to that I where now where the money that I've made going through that process, now I can leverage that and get into that I category where I can invest in businesses. I can invest into real estate. I can invest into different things that can help me grow, as that investor, or maybe use the knowledge that I have and doing things like what you're doing, creating podcasts and things of that nature. But you're still building a business, but technically you're also in that I category, because this is an investment now that when you create this content, it's constantly now going to give you a return over and over and over.
I still get paid from shows that I did 2 years ago.
See? And that's where true wealth lives, right? So I think that's where our mindsets need to be. At least that's where my mindset is that how do I get into that area where I can now passively make money without having, because at my age, I'm in my mid-50s now. I don't have a lot of stamina to be doing it the way I was doing it when I was in my 20s and 30s, right? So now I have to be a little more strategic about how I do things to be able to create that longevity. So using tools like the AI tools and the growth that's happening right now, I think all those things kind of come into play.
Yeah, I love it. And then, so you have a program where you're helping people learn how to become private lenders, right? Talk a little bit about that program.
Well, we don't necessarily have a program. People, it's funny because people keep asking me about, man, do you teach?
I'm speaking into existence.
Right, and I'm telling you, man. As you know, these programs, coaching and programs, mentorship, that's a lot of work. I tell people all the time, I'm like, man, it's a lot of work, and to do that while you're actually doing that thing at the same time, that's tough. That's why I never really have done it. Now what I am going to start doing is just letting people know that coming on shows like this, letting people know that it is out there, right? It is an opportunity where you can get involved in things like that, and hopefully be on more shows like this where we can talk more in depth about, how do I set myself up to do this, right? Because it's not rocket science. Right. Let the truth be told, it's not rocket science, right? You think about it. If you're investing in real estate today, you can be a private lender, right? Somebody out there is needing access to capital, right? They got a project that they can't pull off. Now, for me, I stay in a box. I don't do deals over $1 million, right? Personally, I don't. Now, if I will syndicate with other investors, if that deal where I may bring in 3 or 4 other investors, or even bring in a private equity group and syndicate it with them to do a bigger deal. But personally, I try to stay in that small spot because I got a limited amount of capital, right? But to me, it's a form of just investing in real estate where instead of me now being out there managing the contractors, I can partner with, someone, that real estate investor, become their capital partner, and help them pull off their deal. They're providing great quality projects for homeowners and things of that nature. I get a great return on my money, but here's the cool thing about these investors, because I have to, when I'm doing the deal analysis, I know how much money they're going to make, right? Because I'm structuring the deal, right? These guys are making, 100% return on their money.
Wow.
Right? So sometimes when people hear, the interest rate is 12, 13%, well, would you not pay 12 or 13% when you're getting 100% return on your money?
100%.
Right, what I mean? That's a small price to pay when you're getting, and you're basically only leveraging a small amount of your money, because when I do my deal analysis, most of the money is coming from me. But I'm getting the smaller return on investment, right? So, rightly so, because it's not my project. Right. Yeah. So I think it's a way of helping other small businesses at the same time getting a great return and getting it passively.
And so what advice would you have for an entrepreneur, right, who is looking to have sort of like that level of success that you've had and, scale and kind of get to that next level? What advice would you give that person?
I think the key is becoming financially literate, right? A lot of entrepreneurs, as you probably hear it, would say, well, I'm not a numbers person, right? Well, you need to be a numbers person, right? Not to say that you need to be a CPA. You don't need to be, but you need to understand your numbers. Because the key in the success is in the numbers, right? knowing how to structure a deal. And if I'm doing a government contracting deal and I'm putting together that deal, I know what my return is going to be. I know what my profit margins are and things of that nature. And I know where if something happens, even if I have to dip down and overspend, I know where my thresholds are. And that's simply because I know my numbers. So I encourage anyone, know your numbers, right? There's so many tools out there now that can help you in becoming and knowing these numbers, right? QuickBooks and all these type of tools. But I think that's the most important thing. You don't have to be the CFO, right? Or anything, but you still need to know what's happening financially within your business.
Yeah. Man, powerful, brother. Like it was so much pleasure just kind of having this conversation. Again, insiders, I need y'all to rewind this because you gave so much game around becoming a private lender and understanding the other ways, right? Because building true wealth around real estate is one way, but then there's other ways that you could build wealth. But then even the game that you gave on government contracting, and y'all make sure y'all pick up, Millionaire or Bootstrapped Millionaire, so y'all can read his story. You can really kind of get the game. If somebody wanted to connect with you, where can they find you?
So on my social handles is Tim T. Mercer. We do have a Bootstrapped Millionaire IG page. On that page, we drop a lot of info, just daily inspirational quotes, videos, and things of that nature. So you can follow the Bootstrapped Millionaire IG page, but my personal page is Tim T. Mercer.
And we're going to work on that program for him because he, we got some tips and tricks on how to get the program done where he's not doing most of the work, but we using his knowledge.
That's right. I need help with that.
We're going to work on that program.
Right.
So I spoke into existence. Yeah. So look out for the Bootstrapped Millionaire community coming soon. We are closing out. That's a great name, though.
I like that.
Like, I'm a Bootstrapped Millionaire. Like, and you have a community called. We got to trademark that before we end it. Right. We got to trademark that before we end it. Right? But imagine having the Bootstrapped Millionaire community.
I like that.
And people are running around, I'm a Bootstrapped millionaire.
Well, look, you and I need to talk. I need your help on that.
Bootstrap, I like that. That's a great name.
I like that.
That's a great name. All right, look, we're closing out the vault. Another awesome episode of Inside the Vault with Ash Cash, the greatest money mindset show on the planet. Make sure you go to InsideTheVaultShow.com. Follow us on all social media platforms at Inside the Vault. Me, I am Ash Cash. Make sure you visit me, IamAshCash.com. Follow me on all social media platforms at I am Ash Cash, right? So follow me on all social media platforms at I am Ash Cash, and make sure you join the Abundance community where you can see behind the scenes footage of our guests, exclusive content. Go to theabundancecommunity.com. I appreciate you, insiders. Listen, I need y'all to share this video with like 10, 20 people. I need you to tell them to like. I need you to tell them to subscribe. I need to blow up our subscription. So make sure y'all tell everybody about this. InsideTheVaultTV.com so you can subscribe to the channel. But I appreciate you, insiders, for coming and spending time with us week after week after week. We appreciate you more than words can express. And I'll see you next time, same place, but in God's will. All right, y'all. Peace!